One morning I was really late for work on base, and so my supervisor, of course, has a key to your dorm room. She came in thinking she was going to catch me sleeping, and instead she found me unconscious on my dorm room floor. As the doctors and nurses are all starting to stand over me, it became like something out of a movie or a TV show where my vision starts to kind of go to the left, to the right, and things get hazy, and it just didn't feel like reality. And then the voice to the left of me said, "You're going to have air is going to travel up your arm. It's going to be really painful, but everything's going to be okay." Finally, after trying to continually look over to my left, I finally did. And not only was there nobody to the left of me, but I saw the screen completely flatline. In that moment, as I saw myself flatline, I started traveling upwards. It was the best feeling I think I could ever experience. It was like this beautiful, blissful, just this feeling of love surrounding my body. My name is Chase Skyler DeMayo, and I grew up in Orlando, Florida. My grandparents actually adopted me from the day I was born. My mother had me way too young. She was 17, and my biological father had no interest in being in the picture. But luckily, my grandparents had already adopted quite a few other children. So I actually have 2 Korean sisters, a Korean brother, and a black brother. You don't think about, your grandparents adopted you and your parents are different until you start going to school and people start pointing out that you don't look like your siblings. We would go out to eat and people would ask, "What church are you with?" Because it didn't make sense that all of these different looking kids are all part of the same family. We would pile out of an actual, Tropic Traveler bus, if you remember those. And we just had this great childhood. In 7th grade, I had an opportunity to join an ROTC, a middle school, military program. And I jumped at the opportunity. I was one of the first volunteers. My grandfather served in the military and my great-grandfather served in the Navy. And so there was always this something inside of me that said, this is what you need to do as well. Certainly wasn't a burden. It was something that I was really excited to, feel that call of, to go and defend the country that I really loved. And so as soon as I could join, the second I turned 17, I joined the Air Force because my dad, who served in the Army, said, "If you're going to join any branch and you're going to let me sign paperwork for you to join, you're going to join the Air Force." Because I think he was always a little jealous of how good the Air Force had it. And, as a parent, you want the best for your kids. So the Air Force it was. From basic training, I joined as a SERE instructor, SERE, and that's Survival, Evasion, Resistance, and Escape. The job of a SERE instructor is to essentially learn the terrain for pilots, and then you would train the pilots if there was ever a mishap or an accident, how to survive off the land. Not long into that training, I injured both of my knees. It was just a training accident, unfortunately. It's like getting hurt in practice. It's kind of embarrassing, but both kneecaps kind of came out and ruptured out. And the surgery that they were going to do is called a lateral release, and it's where they reset the kneecaps back in. Looking back now, I probably could have rehabbed it without surgery and still been doing the original job. But the surgeon in the Air Force said that surgery was the best course at that time. And unfortunately, the knee surgery wasn't a success. Up until that point, I had a clear goal of what I wanted for my life and what I expected for my life, 20 years in the military. And once the knee injury happened, it started to crumble, my goals and my vision for my life. It was catastrophic for me. I didn't know what I was going to do. And I started to get really scared and really nervous. My friends were worried about me just because I felt like my life was caving in. They start this process of retirement where they say, your body is no longer good enough, to stay in the military, and it is a long process. During that time, I started showing up late. I was young and a little bit unprofessional in that sense where I knew I I was going to get out of the military, so what are they going to do? Are they going to fire me? So I would show up late every once in a while to my office. So one morning I was really late for work on base. And so my supervisor, of course, has a key to your dorm room. She came in thinking she was going to catch me sleeping. And instead she found me unconscious on my dorm room floor. So they sent me immediately, of course, to the Langley Air Force Base Hospital, where they hooked me up to every machine possible, started doing blood work, started doing tests to figure out why I was unconscious on my, dorm room floor. And they couldn't find anything wrong. I was young and I was in the best shape of my life. There was just really no reason why I should be unconscious, right? So they, of course, looked into everything that a doctor should look into. Was he on drugs? Was he drinking? Was it something like that? And at the time, I never touched a drug, still haven't. So they just couldn't make sense of why I was unconscious. So the nurse then said, we're going to do a couple more tests. We're going to do a chest x-ray on you. And if we can't find anything, then we're just going to send you back home. It just, there's really no reason for you to be here still. When she fiddled with my IV, she walked out of the room. From that moment, everything changed. I heard the alarm start going off, and it became like something out of a movie or a TV show where the alarms are going off and my vision starts to kind of go to the left, to the right, and things get hazy, and it just didn't feel like reality. And the nurses and doctors start kind of running in. I was at the end of the hallway, in my hospital room. So they were almost running into the wall. They're running in so fast as the alarms start to blare. And I obviously, of course, knew something was really wrong. As the doctors and nurses are all starting to stand over me and work on my body, somebody sat down to the left of me and started stroking my arm, telling me everything was going to be okay. And while this alarm is going off and while people are shouting and you can hear the nervousness in their voice, I was very aware that they knew something was wrong. And then the voice to the left of me said, you're going to have air is going to travel up your arm. It's going to be really painful, but everything's going to be okay. The pain that started to come up my arm, the best way I can really describe it is like a silver bullet, just a giant bullet. It felt like something 5-10 times too large in that vein. It was so painful that you could almost feel every kind of centimeter or inch of it traveling up. I mean, it really was like a train headed towards, my heart. And I remember my right leg kind of kicking up in the air while those nurses and doctors were above me, just kind of like a natural reaction or reflex to this pain traveling up the arm. But the calm voice to the left of me was so assured and petting my arm. And at the time, you're a military guy. The thought of having a guy kind of stroke my arm, probably if you would have asked me then, was like, I don't want a guy stroking my arm. What are you doing? But it was so calm and reassuring to have somebody to the left of me just saying, it's going to be fine. It's going to be okay. It's such a weird feeling to feel so calm while you're experiencing so much pain, which is really confusing. And while nurses and doctors are shouting at each other, I could so vividly hear the voice to my left was so calm. Finally, after trying to continually look over to my left, I finally did. And not only was there nobody to the left of me, but I saw the screen completely flatline. In that moment, as I saw myself flatline, I started traveling upwards. The best way I can describe it, and I get goosebumps every time I talk about it, it just felt like everything started to free up in my body. It felt like ice, like this really cool, beautiful feeling of my body just starting to release and kind of pour out of my chest, almost like shooting a tunnel out of my chest of light. It was the best feeling I think I could ever experience. It was like this beautiful, blissful, just this feeling of love surrounding my body. I could have experienced that feeling a million times over, and there's just no way to describe it. But I was moving upwards to this area where I couldn't see where I was going, but I just had the complete trust of where I'm going is really beautiful. If this is the feeling now, I can only imagine where I'm about to go. And not before long, I ended up in this garden. And it was a garden filled with flowers and plants that we've never seen before. And these beautiful colors, and everything was just vibrant. It was almost like looking into the sun where you have to squint a little bit because everything was so beautiful and colorful. Well, I had no preconceived notion of really what heaven was. I grew up loving Elvis, and I thought Elvis would be waiting there for me and everything would just be kind of calm and peaceful and you'd be up in the clouds. And the heaven that I experienced was so much more vivid and so much more real. There wasn't a floating sense. Your body felt so light. There was zero gravity, but the garden and the leaves were so real. These plants and flowers that were so bright, we don't have those colors here. I could say they were purple and red and blue, but it just doesn't do it justice. Everything was just so bright and almost kind of womp womp. There's a vibration off of everything. You just felt so in tune and connected. When we walk past the tree or we walk down a sidewalk now, you might say, oh, that's a beautiful plant or a beautiful flower, where in heaven it felt like I was feeling the plants and the flowers. When you dream, you don't necessarily feel something. You kind of envision it, and if you're dreaming, you're off in this little world. This was so real because I was feeling things, and I felt the grains of dirt in between my toes, and I hate being barefoot, so it was a vivid memory for me that I could actually feel dirt in my feet. And ahead of me, I saw a gentleman in a robe, and he was chasing after a little boy, about 3 or 4 years old, little curly-haired blonde boy. The little boy was kind of running ahead, looking back. He was being cheeky, and as I see the boy running, I'm just watching this beautiful interaction, almost like father-son. And I watched this little boy just so happy and so purely enjoying his life. And until I got close, then you kind of look down and go, oh my gosh, that's me. I forgot I had blonde curly hair. And I used to be that happy, and I used to just laugh all the time and smile constantly as a kid growing up. No matter what was going on around me, it was always I was always a happy kid. And I think I had forgotten that by that time. By the time I was 19, I was taking life so seriously. I was so worried about career and military and all these things that I had so forgotten about being that happy little kid. And so that was a beautiful reminder of how I used to be. As I see the man turn to me, I immediately knew it was Jesus. And I should say too, Jesus didn't look like what I would have thought he would have looked like, but I was so certain it was him. He had short brown hair, piercing green eyes, and the biggest grin possible. But growing up, you see a man with long blonde hair a lot of times, and really skinny, and this man was just a healthy, peaceful man in a robe. But as sure as you're sure of what your left hand and your right hand is, and you look in the mirror and you know it's you, I knew it was Jesus. And in that moment, Jesus turned to me and he basically showed me, this is what your life should be. Spreading light, love, and laughter. Almost like a sense of a reminder that you've been here and you already know this. Like you have forgotten it, but you've always known about the joys in life, about finding any reason to make yourself smile throughout the day. And this reminder that you're taking life way too seriously. At that time in the Air Force, I really thought my life was over. I had everything that I had trained for and hoped for and envisioned for my life was done. And that conversation alone was enough for me to say, okay, I'm focusing on all the wrong stuff here. I'm focusing on a career. I'm focused on money. I'm focused on making sure I can make a car payment, when really none of that at the end of the day matters. It's feeling fulfilled and feeling like I have given back to the world of making people smile. And it was such a good lesson of, this is what life is supposed to be forever. You're supposed to always find joy and laughter and happiness. And we stood there for quite a while, and time stands still. I couldn't say if it was 5 minutes. I couldn't say if it was 5 hours. It was this amount of time for me to get so much knowledge that I felt like I already knew. But it was such a friendly relationship that felt like I had spent so much time with him in the past. And before I knew it, he kind of joked and smiled and said, you have to go back. And I didn't argue. I said, yeah, I know. And it was such a reminder that I have been here multiple times. maybe not as dramatic as a near-death experience or being flatlined, but I have been there so many times that it was just a kind of, better, you can't stick around here too long, you've got to go back. And I said, okay, I understand. And it was just this very playful, friendly thing, just like you're saying goodbye to a friend, that you've seen him before and you're going to see him again. So you're just saying bye for now. And it was very peaceful. There was no part of my body that said I wanted to stay. It was just like, spending time with a friend and, you've got to go back to your house before you go back home again, and it just felt like it was so understood that I had a lot more to do. And before I knew it, I was back in my body in a different city, off base. So the Air Force during that time had sent me off base to Hampton, Virginia, to a different hospital for me to be pronounced dead. And I woke up and I started opening my eyes. And of course, at that time, when you have the best dream, you think it's a dream, and you kind of close your eyes to go back and you open your eyes again, like that, I can't go back right now. And my eyes were open and my body felt completely normal. I had no pain in my chest. Obviously the confusion had set in of, I'm not in the same room I died in, and the people walking past the hallway are not in military uniforms. So it was very clear that I wasn't on base anymore. Before long, a nurse had peeked in and, I said, hello. And she looked frazzled and she said, I'm going to go get a doctor, and took off and ran away. And a doctor came back in and said, I don't know what to tell you, but we're going to send you back to the Air Force, and they can do what they want with you. And that was it. I got a chance to call a friend and got on the phone with them and said, I just died. Can you come pick me up from the hospital? And they said, of course. And we did what every person who would die and come back does. And we went to Chick-fil-A because I was starving. I guess death made me very hungry. And we went to Chick-fil-A and I said, I'd really like to get out of town for a couple of days. I was really just confused, and I didn't want to go back and sit in the same dorm room that I was in. And we went to Washington, D.C. for a couple of days. Saw the monuments and took pictures. During that time, my left arm was just black and blue. The bruising was so bad from that air traveling up to my heart. I went back to the hospital again because the bruising on my arm was still so bad. And I wanted an answer. I wanted to make sense of it. Why did I die? Why did I experience, the flatlining? And so I went back to the hospital and they documented what had happened to my arm. And they wrote an entire paragraph of patient suffered an air embolism. That's when air travels up to your heart. So it looks like the nurse, on accident, allowed air to get through the IV that was, in one of the main veins for me and accidentally flatlined me. But the nurses and doctors, they couldn't make sense of it either. I don't know how many people that they saw flatline survived. So there was never really an honest conversation with the medical staff of, here's exactly what happened to you, and we can't figure out how you're still here. And from that time forward, although I didn't feel comfortable telling people the story because I felt very grounded in the sense of, if I go tell people this, they're going to think I'm crazy. And that was a genuine concern because I didn't know about even the term near-death experience or an NDE. That none of that world made sense to me. I just thought people would think I was nuts, and so I just wouldn't tell people unless they were really close to me. And I just didn't know how to navigate this new experience that I had been through. By July 8th, 2008, so just a few months later, I was fully retired from the military. Within a week of me getting back, my life changed so dramatically. Anything that I had thought looked fun growing up or anything that interested me, I said, I'm going to go do it now. I joined a breakdancing club at a local university that I didn't even go to. I ended up doing stand-up comedy for a little bit. I got into photography and I got to photograph people's weddings. I learned how to ballroom dance and became a ballroom dance instructor. And I just was almost like checking these things off of a box of like, I have another opportunity to be here and I'm going to go out and enjoy life. And I just did a huge list of things. I got to host contests with celebrities and get to go on TV, and I got to be an announcer for a local baseball and hockey team in Norfolk, Virginia for a couple of years. I wanted so badly to do things that made me happy, and I could spread the light, laughter, and love that I was told to continue to share. But then this part of me unfortunately said, no, it's time to grow up. You have to grow up now. You have to go get a real person job. So I took a job working for a radio station, and it was a very corporate job. And I did that for quite a few years. And it was fulfilling. I paid my bills. We got a nice house, but that's when really I started to feel guilty that I became selfish and I wasn't sharing laughter with everybody. I was sitting in an office and I was not able to create memories for people anymore. And I went on a retreat. It was with a veteran organization that sends veterans out as a group. And you get to spend 5 days doing yoga and meditation. And they talk to you about, really focusing on your mental health and finding peace within yourself. I had never really meditated. I had never done yoga before. A bunch of macho veteran guys, doing yoga. Of course, everybody at the time maybe rolled their eyes. But at the end of the 5 days, it felt like it was the happiest I had ever been in my life. And so I got back, and my wife immediately, within minutes of seeing me on that Friday afternoon, said, "You're a different person. You seem so relaxed." And that during that time, I was so focused on my corporate job of being the serious executive. And she said, "You've changed. You just seem so happy with yourself." And in that moment, I started to ask again, what is my purpose? Why am I here? I really started to remember my near-death experience. And within a day or two, I started to feel my body completely change and become so aware of my surroundings. And I think just doing the meditation and the yoga and the breathing exercises relaxed my mind so much that I was able to really look at the outside world and get a better understanding of how I could help. I started to really realize that I had gifts that maybe weren't as common as maybe I had thought. And I started to really feel everybody's emotions around me. The intuition became stronger. And I was so aware of if other people around me, complete strangers, were suffering. At the time, I felt this burden of I need to fix everybody around me. I have to heal everybody of their suffering and try to bring any sort of positive energy I can to them to try to help them through that pain. If they're sad and they're near me, it's my job now. It's my job to help them not experience that. I really started to embrace it and accept that this is the new reality of some of the things that I'm able to offer the world. When my grandmother was in the hospital, I found out, and I started to really pray and do what I know. And it's a feeling within my chest or my heart where I can kind of put my hands out and pray for a little less pain. I know that I can't completely heal everybody, but I was just praying for a little less pain for her and a little less suffering. And before I knew it, I started to feel tingling in the palms of my hands. And I'm kind of looking down, and I put my hands down, and I'd look down again, and next thing I know, I've got really visible marks on both palms of my hands. But I knew immediately, okay, this is kind of freaking me out a little bit. And I showed my wife, and I took a picture of it because I said, I need to document this and maybe show it to somebody that I trust. And I showed it to people, and immediately they said, you have to stop taking other people's pain. It's not your pain to take. And I said, okay. In my brain, my human brain, I want to just say it's an allergic reaction. It's just something that's happening to my body, just like getting a rash on your forearm. But they started coming only at times where I was really trying to help somebody around me. So it is not a painful experience at all. It is a peaceful experience that I can visibly feel within my hands, like an energy is coming just through that part of my hand. I was on a plane, and I think it was just completely silent on the plane, and I could never nap on a plane. And I just felt this presence that immediately kind of hit me in my chest and was like, whoa, and I knew it was Jesus again. And we just had this exchange of, hey, you're on the right path, but take care of yourself. If you drain your battery, You're not going to be ever, you're not going to be able to help anybody. And he said, you have to allow people to have a human experience. You can't take everybody's pain, because some people need to experience that pain. And that was profound for me, but it also was really hard. It was a reminder that I can't go try to just heal everybody that I think is suffering, because then I'm going to suffer too. And I have to still allow people to experience this human world that we're in. And it's not my job to continually intervene into people's lives. And it would be very clear when I had the opportunity to heal people. And so that's pretty recent. That's within the last couple of months that I'm now trying to figure out how to use my gifts without interfering in people's lives. It's hard to experience what I experienced and not come back a different person. Laughter, smiling. It's such an easy thing. It's free. It's just like breath, right? Like we can breathe for free. We can pray for free. We can meditate for free, and we can laugh for free. We can find joys in everything. And we live in a world right now where it seems like we're so separated. I drive past the bus stop that I grew up going to almost daily, and I had great memories as a kid laughing and playing right before school. Nowadays, the kids are all 10 feet apart from each other on their phones, and that's tough to watch. To me, smiling and laughter and being close to people is what I think is the best medicine for us. My understanding is that we all are here to serve a very specific purpose. And not everybody's life's purpose has to be this big holy one, that we're meant to all have different goals and different personalities, just like a fingerprint is meant to be different. But for me, it's to continually learn and evolve. When you're a little kid, and when I was that little boy that I saw in heaven, when you're that age, you're absorbing everything and you're continually learning, and you're experiencing everything through a view of everything is great. You don't have these grown-up constraints and stresses on you. And so I try to do that now, is continually try to learn, to stay in school, getting alternative medicine degrees, getting a ministry degree. And after that, I'm going to school again. And I think as long as we continually learn, I think we're going to leave the world in a better place. As long as we learn from history and learn from past mistakes. My grandmother has always said that education would heal the world. And I do believe as long as we are continually learning, that we are setting the next generation up to continually make it better. Knowing that, education looks different to everybody. Whether you're actually in school or you're reading a book every day or you're reading the news every day, as long as it's educating you and not just making you more depressed, I think that is the meaning of life, is learning, evolving, and making everything better than how we came.